Hey everyone, Greta here. Today I'll be sharing with you how to do or how to be able to do more physical challenging shapes. I know that yoga is not just the physical format of it, but then there's always a physical exercise that we cannot not talk about because that is one of the limbs of yoga, and also that is still one of the most popular ways to get people to practice yoga or to be more intrigued or interested about yoga. So, we see a lot of these really fascinating shapes on social media, and maybe, when you are in a physical yoga practice, you will be, encountering these shapes, maybe arm balances, maybe inversions, or maybe deeper variations of a back bend, like wheel poses, or maybe even like, deeper or more challenging hip openers like behind the head. And I often get people asking me, how do you do these? How to get into crow, or how to get into handstand or tripod, things like that. Well, the thing is, aside from how the teacher is cueing you, as a practitioner, I think we also need to be more connected with our bodies. I've been teaching yoga for a long time, and at the same time I've been practicing as well. So I have more years of experiencing practicing than I'm teaching. So that is always that cannot be overridden by the years of teaching. I'm always a practitioner much longer than the amount of time that I've been teaching. So in order to do more physically challenging shapes, you always have to return to how you practice. Shapes like crow pose, or maybe handstand and headstand. It always boils down to the foundational poses like plank pose or chaturanga, or maybe wheel pose. It boils down to bridge pose. Leg behind the head. How are you doing with your butterfly? Things like that. So if you're into arm balance like crow or maybe flying splits, let me ask you, how do you do your chaturanga? Are you doing your chaturanga like elbows pointing out, pointing down, collapsing? If you're doing this, there's no way you can do a crow, because for crow and all those other unbalances, you need to be looking forward and elbows are bent, pointing towards the back. So it's not about how low you can go. It's more about, the structure of the form. Here or here. No. And what about plank? For plank, if you are, holding yourself up, just like that, with the shoulder blades poking up and your lower back collapse, okay, you're holding yourself up rather than pushing the floor away, activating your, abs and activating your leg muscles, then it will be quite difficult for you to find the balance or find that strength and the connection to the floor when you're doing let's say a tripod headstand or maybe even a handstand, because those shapes are actually have a great relationship with one another. And let's say if you want to do wheel pose, or let's say if you want to do forearm wheel, or you want to do a wheel pose with one leg up, then how are you in your bridge? Bridge pose, again, it looks very accessible. A lot of these foundational poses, they look very simple. So a lot of times when the teachers do it, sometimes they don't cue it that specifically. Again, I do understand sometimes it's the scale of the class that's really, really big. And sometimes, if you give too much information to beginners that are more on an elementary level, then it's quite hard for them to grasp the idea. But then I think it always depends on what you choose to teach. And as practitioners, let's go back in bridge pose, let's say. Again, it looks very simple. But then if you want to progress it to wheel, or maybe even different variations of wheel, go back to bridge. How you just, doing like that. Are you connecting with your legs? How is your pelvis? How are the shoulders? Are you here or are you here? Really activating the hamstrings, the underbutt, pressing the shoulders down, and things like that. Or if you're into hip, like if you want to one day put the leg behind the head, for whatever reason, that looks really, really cool. Now, how are you in your Baddha Konasana? Now, if you are here, if you're just kind of, idling, not really sure what to do, then it's really hard to connect to a more physically challenging shape. So what about pigeon? If your pigeon is like here, then again, it's quite difficult to do it. And I'm not saying that, I'm not referring to the physical limitation of it. Again, it's more about the awareness, the mindfulness, and the consciousness of how you are practicing, and at the same time, how the teacher is cueing you. Let's say back in a pigeon, if it's like physically you're quite stuck here, perfectly fine. Are you breathing? If you're like strenuous in a very stressful place, then it's not working, it's not helping, right? The teacher needs to know how to cue, and at the same time, as a practitioner, you also need to know, okay, maybe I'm not here yet because like it feels really, really stressful in your knee. Maybe come back a bit, breathe a little bit better, longer. Then maybe one day, gradually, you may be able to shift, the shin bone away from the body, and ultimately leading to, that leg behind the head. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, the moment you start to practice yoga, you need to have a strong or have a very ambitious goal. That's never the case. For me, stepping onto the yoga mat was never about the physical crazy shapes. It's more about losing weight in the beginning. But anyways, that's a different story. But then it evolved, and when I first started my yoga journey, I'm like, yeah, all these shapes are really cool. Then I was working towards them. And then when I reached the point that I'm like, hey, it's not working. Why is it not working? Then I rewind, I go back to the basics and revisit the whole thing. Even now, I do a lot of handstands now. And I always, every once in a while, I always go back. I always rewind, not just go back, rewind and unlearn and relearn again, because at that time the alignment might be working for you, but over time, if your practice starts to evolve, then your practice would also need to evolve. And the word evolving is not a very linear direction. It's not always going straight forward. Sometimes it means to turn left or turn right and maybe do a U-turn and then restart. And I think that's the fun part of yoga. Any kind of really mindful movement is because your body's always trying to grow and trying to learn. So it's more about the mind. If you're stuck at one point, if you're not letting go of your ego and you're like, I need to just add on, then your practice might become quite stressful. And it might actually backfire. It might not really serve you as much, and then you might be starting to blame. And of course, as a teacher, you also need to pay attention to what cues or what ways to, help the practitioner to have a more open-minded practice, to be more curious and to explore more. So that is my sharing for today. It's nothing specific, not a how-to demo or anything at all, but then I think that this is actually quite important, especially for those of us who are kind of at a plateau, you want to do something a little bit more, your body's ready for it, but then somehow you're stuck. Okay, so like my video, share it, subscribe to my channel, and of course, if you want to practice with me, I have a zillions of different classes now, even with a self-practice, so you can come and practice with me. You will be on your own practicing, and whenever you hit a plateau or you're stuck or you're confused, I'm always here to help you and to guide you whichever way that I can. So DM me, either IG or Facebook, and I'll get back to you ASAP. Take it easy.